evening, everyone, and welcome to the Maitland City Council meeting of January 27th, 2025. Please remember to silence your phones. And for anybody who wants to speak to the public and the council tonight, please fill out a speaker's card. It's easy, it's painless, there's not much information involved, and we have at the podium, we have outside. And let's go ahead and begin this evening's session with a moment of silence. Please join me. Okay, thank you. And now, if you please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we'll begin this evening with a special presentation by the Preserved History of Eatonville and Maitland Eatonville Incorporated, John Beecham. And anybody who'd like to begin the presentation, please, or you're probably going to do it from upstairs.
Start with that.
Okay, we're starting with
Is it Beth Landa?
Dr. Landa.
who's?
Good evening, honorable council members. My name is Beth Landa, and I'm here tonight on behalf of John Beecham's nonprofit organization, Preserved History of Maitland and Eatonville, Inc. I'd like to extend our gratitude for the opportunity to address you this evening. The mission of our nonprofit is to preserve and share the rich history of Maitland and Eatonville through storytelling and the arts, to illuminate the inspiring heritage of our community, and to honor the visionaries and the heroes who helped establish these municipalities in the late 1800s. We're here to present our proposal for an art installation, Art in the Park, or HPAL, Historic Preservation at Lake Lily, which we recommend placing in Lake Lily Park. This project is envisioned as a celebration of our local history, presented through the lens of artistic storytelling, and we aim to engage our community while fostering a deeper connection to its roots. Tonight, we'll outline our concepts and the rationale behind it, demonstrating how this initiative serves as an innovative approach to historic preservation. Importantly, we are not seeking any funds from the council, but instead we ask for your support and approval to proceed to the next phase of development. This evening's presentation begins with a pre-recorded message from local historian Dr. Scott French. Next, I have a PowerPoint highlighting some key elements of the Maitland and Eatonville tour and our shared history. Then, John Beecham will outline the major components of our plan and its significance to our shared heritage. Next, Adam Maitland, a local high school senior, will share a student perspective on the project, followed by Danielle Thomas, director of Maitland's Art and History Museum, who will offer insights from the museum's point of view. And notably, John, Danielle, and I are all proud members of the Maitland Rotary Club. And finally, we'll conclude with a wrap-up by John. As some of you may know, John Beecham and Dr. Scott French have spent the last 5 years leading walking tours through Maitland and Eatonville, bringing our local history to life for residents and visitors alike. So this evening, we hope to further this mission by sharing our vision for art in the park. This is Dr. Scott French giving a tour, and here is Dr. Scott French giving a 2-minute speech.
Hello, my name is Scott French. I live at 456 Piney Croft Lane in Maitland, and I'm here to speak in support of John Beecham and Beth Landa's Historic Preservation at Lake Lily initiative. I have been working with John and Beth to develop a walking tour, and one of the things we realized was that the key stop on the tour, the starting point, Lake Lily, was not well known in regard to its connections to Maitland's origins or to the really inspiring story of Maitland and Eatonville and their common origins. It's part of my research. I've been working on this project for 7 years and have given many public talks, and am very excited to move forward with this in collaboration with John, Beth, and with Danielle at Maitland Art History. I think that it's exciting to think about possibilities for interpreting that story at Lake Lily, formerly known as St. John's Hole. And I know that John will be sharing some of the details, some of the key documents that tell us that story. But I'd be happy to speak again on this subject. I'm sorry I can't be with you tonight, but I just wanted to tell you that I am very much excited about what's being proposed and look forward to future conversations moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, on to the walking tour. Here's where the story begins. St. John's Hole was the lake around which many black workers, who were referred to as freedmen, lived a decade or two after the Civil War. Today, St. John's Hole is called Lake Lily. Famed author Zora Neale Hurston wrote about St. John's Hole in her 1942 memoir. And I'm going to read a quote. There's 2 quotes here, but in the interest of time, I'll read the second one. The Negroes could be seen every day but Sunday squatting around St. John's Hole, washing clothes and fishing, while their men went forth and made their support in cutting new ground, building and planting orange groves. Things were moving so swiftly that there was plenty to do with good pay. Here we are at Church of the Good Shepherd, which is just south of Lake Lily Park on the bicycle path that travels alongside the railroad tracks. This historic Carpenter Gothic-style church was erected back in the 1880s by Reverend Whipple of Minnesota. The original 1883 chapel was featured last summer in the Winter Park magazine for its unique historic architecture. Inside the Church of the Good Shepherd Chapel is a stained glass window that pays tribute to one of Eatonville's founding fathers and the first mayor of Maitland, and his name was Captain Josiah Eaton. And Reverend Whipple's wife was instrumental in helping to establish the first church in Eatonville, which would come to be named St. Lawrence Church in honor of another founding father, Lewis Lawrence. Walking west on Lake Avenue, we come to Thurston House, which was built in 1885 as a winter getaway for Minneapolis entrepreneur Cyrus B. Thurston. He built a 4-bedroom Queen Anne Victorian farmhouse. It still stands today. It's been completely restored to period furniture and architecture, and it operates as Maitland's only bed and breakfast with a bucolic view of Lake Eulalia and Lake Catherine. Walking west on Lake Avenue, as you enter Eatonville, the name of the road changes to Kennedy Boulevard. On your left is what looks like a rundown cabin, but it's actually the original St. Lawrence Church in desperate need of some historic preservation. This is a church that was suggested by Reverend Whipple's wife. It's miraculously still standing, and it's the oldest building on Kennedy Boulevard. This church was a gift from founding father Lewis Lawrence, and it predates the town of Eatonville by 6 years. It was named St. Lawrence to honor Lewis Lawrence. Constructed in 1881, it's thought to be the first property ever procured for the purpose of establishing a new black town in Florida. It was the first African-American religious institution in the area. Over the years, the church was rebuilt or renovated at least 3 times, so around 1900, this first church building was moved to a lot across the street from today's church. And here's today's church, the St. Lawrence Church, And inside there are murals that were painted by Andre Smith and donated in 1936 to the church. And Andre Smith was, you know, you have a couple of his paintings on the wall here. He's the founder of the Maitland Art Center. Heading west, we come to the Hurston Museum of Fine Arts, which was established in 1990 and named after writer and anthropologist Orville Hurston. And since this is a very abbreviated tour, our last stop is back in Maitland at the Art and History Museums of Maitland on Packwood Avenue. In 1937, Andre Smith founded the original and visionary Aztec Mayan Revival Artist Colony here, which he originally called the Research Studio. Andre Smith's Maitland Art Center is the only National Historic Landmark in Central Florida. The building was featured on last year's Maitland Rotary Art Festival poster. And Andre Smith's benefactor was Mary Curtis Bach of the Bach Tower family. And also, interestingly, Andre Smith knew and was friendly with Zora Neale Hurston. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to John Beecham.
Thanks, Ben. Good evening. My name is John Beecham. I was born and raised in Maitland. Robbins Avenue, exactly, if you're familiar with Edenville and Maitland, the Bellamy Park. Bellamy Park is my grandparents. Wes and Gussie Bellamy donated that land in the 70s. I remember sitting at the dining room table with my grandparents discussing that Maitland wanted to build a park, and they asked them for land. And this discussion was really deep with my grandparents and my mom and dad. What should we do? And I remember my grandmother said, Maitland hasn't been very good to us. I think we should sell it. And when I pass by that property today, I look at the potential of that. It could have been a subdivision. It could have been homes, apartment complexes. But for sure, the value of land is not decreasing. But the kids that enjoy that park each day are not just from Maitland, but they're from Edenville. Shared land, shared history. What was important about what Beth was saying, and the reason Edenville Park came in, is because of Maitland. Edenville was developed and established because of Maitland. So we're going to go through some stuff, Bellamy Park, and she talked about shared history, some things she talked about shared history. You know, how I got involved in this is that I got a vision 15 years ago that God had some things he wanted me to do. By profession, I'm a landscaper. This is not what I do, so I told my brother and another friend, if I start doing some crazy things like speaking and talking in front of people, like I'm doing now, and I talk very fast, I go, it has to be a vision from God. It's not me. And it led me here. So one day I was at Maitland Art and History, and Dr. French had an exhibit on the wall about the Bellamy family. And I said, Wes and Gussie Bellamy are my grandparents, and we formed a relationship telling the shared history and the story of Maitland and historic Edenville. When we look at some of the common denominators, if you look at the 32751, Maitland and Edenville shares the 32751. And I often ask myself, what's the secret sauce? Is that the secret sauce? Because during the Hurston writes that Negro Edenville and white Maitland has never had any incident of any type or any trouble between the two communities. And so I say, is that the secret sauce, the 32751? And then we go deeper and we look at Josiah Eden. Josiah Eden was Maitland's first mayor. If you look at the charter of Maitland and Edenville, the same gentlemen that signed the Maitland charter are the same guys that signed the Edenville charter, the same African American men and the same men from Maitland. And one of the reasons that the men all signed the charter is because back at that time, too, women couldn't vote. But they shared that history because of one guy named Joe Clark. Joe Clark was a former slave, and they all lived around Lake Lily and shanty towns. So when Beth tells that story, why Lake Lily, St. John's so important, when emancipation brought them to this frontier land, Maitland, they all slept around Lake Lily and shanty towns, homeless towns, tent towns. And Lewis Lawrence decided that these people need better. So Joe Clark told them his vision and this dream to start a black colony. And so Joe Clark and Lawrence Lewis sold land, just like he sold land to Clark, and that's how Edenville got established. Not only did it got established, it also got them to incorporate. So when we started the Maitland walking tour, we just, it's like a treasure trove. We kept finding out things that this used to be St. Joe's Hole. Zora, no right that you could find it, what Beth just talked about, the women's fishing and washing their clothes around Lake Lily while the men went up to the groves. And we began to, and people, and I talked to people, and they're like, did you know the story about Maitland? I go, I never heard that before. And we just believe that we should share that story with bronze statues around Lake Lily, telling that story that Zora talks about. And we have the, there it is there. I want to start with like number 5. Do you guys have a copy of this? Okay. I want to start with number 5, the archways. The archways will say, with the help of art and history and Dr. Scott French and the field advice, this Lake Lily, formerly known as St. John's Hole. So when people walk around Lake Lily, they know there's something special happening at this location here. So we would like to do that. Second would be the carpenter shop, and that's number 1 on your chart. And why is that? We talk about art and history and Dr. Scott French. Why do we make a Maitland and Edenville shared museum, the history of the two? So when people come walking along Lake Lily, formerly known as St. John's Hole, they can go to the museum and understand some of that history, the shared history of Josiah Eden, Joe Clark, and Lewis Lawrence. And I'll get my notes here. And then so, like, if you look at number 6, it is a shared history board. So we want to put some type of marquee up that says, to put the important dates of Maitland and Edenville, from the incorporation, stuff about the shared history. So it becomes a treasure trove when people walk around Lake Lily. They realize that they're on this historical journey. And then on number 4 would be the founders. We want to do a bronze statue. If you look at number 4 on your chart, is Lawrence Lewis, Josiah Eden, and Joe Clark, those 3 guys, with writings, of course, with the help of art and history and Dr. Scott French, telling that story, whatever that story may be, but a joint project that perhaps maybe even get Edgewater students involved or Water Park students involved to build some type of community cohesiveness. And number 7, Zora's right. If you look at the women's around the lake, you know, Zora writes that you can find a couple colorblind washing and fishing, but is that an exhibit of Zora? That could change to be a statue of Zora, because Zora writes about Maitland. She writes about Edenville. Zora had a relationship with Andre Smith. And so again, more shared history, that Maitland made a contribution toward American history. It's more than just local history, it's local American history. And then if we look at number 2, the Groveland, they pick fruits, labor. It's the labor that made them stay here too. It was like, the slogan was, there's gold in those trees. And if you read some of Zora's writing and some of Dr. Fritz's conversations, is that the work was plentiful. And if you look at when Maitland helped Edenville incorporated, if you look at other southern countries, southern states, Edenville had flourishing land, grove land, pineapple grove. There was gain there in that incorporated municipality. Economic impact. Tourism, global tourism is $2.7 million. I mean, that's the global impact. What we're hoping to do too, on that walk, we've talked to people that say, you know what, this would be a nice place for Orange County Public School Board to bring their kids also and learn some local history that happened here in Maitland. It started here, and instead of just driving kids to St. Augustine. Tourism is a leading economic too, because tourism people come in history, they come year after year after year to visit. If it was an attraction like Disney or Universal, they have to tear down every 5 years and rebuild it to bring people back. But I can see that's economic impact when we look at some of our restaurants that are closing in this local area here. That tourism part of it could really drive an economic engine. Also, I think it would open doors, not just for us in art and history, but for Maitland also to get some of the tourist tax dollars too, to emphasize some of the things that they want to do. So it could be a great community project. But the economic impact of this is really great. And I'm going to bring up Adam next. One of the things too that this is contagious. This is Orlando History Center. As you see, they have bronze statues there too downtown. They have the gators and then this guy's wrestling a gator. But this is kind of like the thing, what we want to do when people walk around Lake Lily, realize that you're not just walking for a leisure walk, even though that's good too. You get a chance to see the history, that living museum that I like to call a learning ground in the city of Maitland. And this is all really Maitland shared history. And I think we're going to bring up Adam, an Edgewater Eagle student.
Where do you go to school?
Huh?
Where do you go to school?
Edgewater Eagle.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
Good evening, my name is Adam Mendelson. I'm a senior at Edgewater High School. I'm 17 years old and I live at 827 Lake Catherine Court in Maitland, Florida. I did have a script tonight, but I realized that I want this to come more from the heart. As of recently, I've realized how, well, in the past 4 years of high school, I've realized how impactful education really can be. As Nelson Mandela once said, education is a tool which you can use to change the world. In light of that, I started a nonprofit for math tutoring, and the reason I share that is to tell you how much I truly value education. And more specifically, I also value history. I've received 5 as the highest score on all my history exams, and I don't share that to boast, but to tell you how valuable I think understanding and learning from history can be. And that all being said, I was completely unaware of the history between Maitland and Eatonville. I had no idea. I love art museums, I love going places, I love learning about where, the history of our town, history of Eatonville, everything. And, we share the same zip code as, John Beach was talking about, 32751. What does that mean? Where does that, where do we establish, how is Eatonville established? And that's what it tells the story. Recently at my school, I partnered with Hate Ends Now to bring a replica cattle car from the Holocaust and 25 artifacts to my school. And I did that because remembering the past is very important. Honoring the past and what has happened in the past teaches, our future generations, and honors what has happened and what not to do and what to do. And I really don't think, I just didn't know. That's really the whole reason I'm here to tell you that I support HPAL 32751 entirely. I mean, this is so important, tangible learning and learning by seeing, not just out of a textbook. Hearing a teacher talk, kids, they don't pay attention, they learn. And walking on the lake and learning, after going on the walking tour with Dr. Lund, John Beach and Dr. French, and actually hearing the history, it's incredible. Now I drive through town and I know where this building came from. I'm learning so much today, about Eatonville, even about Maitland. So it is a shared history. It's not raising one up, it's together. Better together is the slogan. And so I just want to say, as a member of 32751, as a proud Edgewater Eagle and future Gator, go Gators. I did just find out about UF. I'm excited about that. I fully support this project, and it's truly incredible the work that they're doing. So I just want to say thank you. Seriously, it's incredible.
Adam, you might have lost points because there's FSU and Vanderbilt fans up here.
It's okay.
Danielle Thomas. Hi everybody, Danielle Thomas, Director of the Art and History Museums of Maitland, and I'm delighted to be here to speak about the potential of this project. When John approached the museum about his vision for Lake Lily, we were, as you can imagine, delighted about the intersection of history and public art. There's so much potential here. And if the council agrees to explore this project, the museum will look forward to being a part of the team that John assembles of community members and subject matter experts to further develop this concept. So I do want to share my thoughts on why I feel this project is important. When you speak about race relations in the United States, you are speaking to a tremendous amount of pain. Florida is certainly no exception to that. When you say the names of places like Rosewood, when you say Ocoee, you know exactly what I'm talking about without mentioning dates or incidents. It's because places hold memory and they hold pain as well. But in Maitland, there's something beyond that pain that you can look to. There's something very hopeful in this community. and in neighboring Eatonville. The story of Maitland and Eatonville is a story of people coming together across racial and economic and social divides. Lewis Lawrence, who is one of the key figures in this story, once wrote in a telegram to his friend Grover Cleveland, talking about what was happening down here in Maitland, and he wrote, "No north, no south." Something special happened in this community. Eatonville is the oldest self-governed African-American township in the United States. It was established at a time when members of the African-American community were denied the right to vote, including in Orlando, right next to us. Maitland was different. Winter Park was different. Joseph Clark wrote in 1885 describing why Eatonville was special. He said, "When a man establishes a little home here, it is safe for himself and his family. We have not a pauper in the place, and a man could hardly go hungry here if he tried." And as proof of the economic impact that his dream had, the 1900 census of Eatonville recorded that out of the 27 families living there, 20 owned their home. Imagine that. It's such a simple thing, but it was denied to so many people at that time. This is a history that is not just significant to our region, it's not just significant to our state. This is nationally significant history, and it was born right here in Maitland at the shores of Lake Living. That's something that should be regarded as precious. It's certainly something to be remembered. It's something to teach our youth. And I believe that this project, if done well and involving the right parties to explore nuances of representation, has the potential to be a source of tremendous pride for the community.
See who's next. John Beecham. Come on up. Finish us off.
I mean, if you guys have any questions, that would be my next concern, my next thought.
Well, so this has been a fantastic presentation. Do you have any more to say, or should we open it up to questions?
I think you should open up the question, yes, sir.
Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions?
I've met with John on this, so I've already went through it with him, so I think all my questions have been answered.
What are you, I know you mentioned at the beginning, or maybe it was Beth, that you're not, it's not funding that you're looking for. I mean, I assume at some point, if you were going to put statues at the park, you would need the city's permission. Is that essentially what you guys are looking for?
We have an endorsement by Maxwell Cross, his office is here, Peggy. Anna Escamilla has given us a letter. Mother Sarah at the Good Shepherd Church has given a letter of support. And we've talked with Windsor Christian, haven't really had final conversations with them and support. So I think the vehicle is open. Eatonville just got $1.3 million, but the tourist tax dollars, I think that we have a compelling story to tell. And I think that the fundraising will put that vehicle together and the people together and go out and raise the money. The storytelling. But if the city would like to help build archways, because I know they have a sign program, so we want to work with those guidelines, but not necessarily, we want to raise it ourselves. We want to get with Edgewater High School and Winter Park High School, and maybe even Domerick and some of those other schools, and try to see if we can build some type of correlation, community participation. So, and that's what I think Danielle was alluding to, is that we want to come together and have that business meeting and finalize that team and what's their purpose and goal and what we want to do, so we can just build that team and go out and raise money. But
Great grant project as well, I'm
So
sure. Yeah, I was saying it sounds like a good fodder for grants, I'm sure, as well. So it sounds like you're in the pretty early, I mean, it's very well developed and great presentation, but it sounds like in terms of the project itself, that you're in the earlier stages of things. So just want to make sure if there's an ask that we know what that is.
Again, just so I think Danielle knows that there is grant funding to be pursued. Every grant requires owner permission, and our policy requires that prior to submitting any grant applications, that those come before the city council, so you would know in advance of any request that's made.
So the grants would be coming not to their organization, but through the city?
It
Is that how you?
it depends. You always need owner permission, though.
Right. Yeah, and I think to Laura's point, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of great ideas, and then I think as it progresses, and it sounds like more of the questions or topics might come up, but I think the history of Maitland and Eatonville and all that is something to be told, and the partnership between the cities. I know when my kids were at Dominic, we started doing a lot with Hungerford, and did some projects over there with them, so I think the connection between communities is strong. So having things that remind us of that are valuable. So as this goes on, I think it's interesting to hear.
Yeah, we would like to maybe, our first project would probably be the signage, archways, and see how that plays into code and regulations, and then get a cost on that. And then one of our second steps might be to perhaps maybe the Carpenter House and try to get that museum kind of set up a little bit with art and history, depending on their feedback on that. And then architecturally put that together on what those statues look like, the cost, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what we just kind of like need a little permission to move forward, I think, would be the thing. And we could get with art and history and Dr. Scott French and put together a game plan and represent it, or we could deal directly with city manager, or whatever that process like. But we would like to move forward as quick as possible, because Adam and I are ready to raise the money right away. So that's what we want to do.
Well, I think, John, I mean, first, thank you for the presentation. Thank you, everybody, Adam and Beth and Danny, for a great presentation. And I can't really add anything more to it other than to say I'm supportive of the idea. I mean, it's a fantastic history, and it's I guess I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, I had thought about it because I've talked to Utah about it for a long time, and I've kind of thought generally about it. I grew up in this area, and kind of like Adam, so I have a general understanding of it, but I never really thought about it in terms of, there are so many ugly stories to tell about race relations in Florida, or in the South, the Deep South generally, and this really wasn't that. I mean, it was the opposite of that. I mean, it was a moment when two communities came together and did great things, and those stories don't get told so often. You don't see those, in the bookstores or in the whatever. It is as all news goes. You kind of go to what is most dire. But this would be a nice story, a good news story to tell, and I think we owe it to our residents to showcase it to the extent we can. And so I think what you hear from the council here tonight, less than one person who probably would be supportive as well, I would guess, is that we have a general support for it. I mean, as it goes forward, it's going to become more particularized as, what do the permits look like? What do the grant applications look like? What is the extent of, the city's commitment to it? And those things will all come in time. But, as a general starting point, I think I'm very excited about it. I think that's what I hear up here generally. So if that's the kind of thing you need to hear from us, then yes. I would say, just one cautionary note may be that, Lake Lily it's a great park. Probably you could say it's the city's showcase park, although Independence Lane over here might have a claim on that. But it is really, it's something that people love to go to, and people have, memories of it, and active participation in it, and they go to all the events we have around there. And so, the idea of having a couple of elements in there that tell us, that ground the history of Maitland and Eatonville together is a good thing. I would just, the cautionary note would be, there's a lot going on in this presentation you have here, and I know you all are at the point where you're dreaming big, and you should, because this is going to be a conversation that's going to keep going on. But, I would say that it's very expensive. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of other elements in the park that will be vying for the space as well. So, but that said, I think this is a fantastic. This is a great moment to see you all coming together, and different elements of the city coming together and working on a great project. So, congratulations, and go forward. It'll be a good thing.
I have a question for Mark. Mark, what would how would this process go along? I mean, I know some point we have to all vote on it. I don't think that's now. What would the next process be? That they put in for permits? I mean, how does the
I think
process
that
go?
permits would be the last process that they would be putting in for. I think fundraising would be the first, whether that be through private fundraising or grant funding. They would, I think, the most efficient way, they'd be keeping contact with us as staff, me and Jay primarily, and point people to see as this progresses, and as when it gets to a point in time when there is an initial ask, or at least potential for an ask, we get that to city council early as we possibly can, so you're involved with that, participate in that as they move forward.
So they're just looking for support from us, which they have a video now on YouTube that they can use, and just know that we're all supportive, right?
I think today was just to make sure there wasn't a no.
Right.
For this.
Right.
Yeah, if you all are going to go out and start fundraising, I mean, you're going to need to know that at least there's, kind of moral support coming from the council as it's currently iterated, and we're going to have 2 new members up here. Sad face. But a happy face for the new guys. And that'll change over time. This is going to be a project of years, probably, not months. So, I mean, probably be a whole new council up here by the time we get to the point of committing to, to put things in the ground, perhaps. But, hopefully not. I mean, it'd be nice if things move faster, but experience kind of indicates otherwise. So, but right now what you need is I think, the council to say, yeah, this is a good thing, guys. We would be supportive of your fundraising efforts and the general idea.
Okay. Anybody got any questions? Yeah, any questions? You did? We're good. Okay, they're good. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. I think this could be historical again. It's a double historical, double whammy for us to showcase ourselves to the world, and also to our community, our fellow citizens, that we really live in a healthy place. I grew up here. I walked these streets from Rogers Avenue on. It's kind of exciting because I feel like I had dual citizenship because my address is Maitland, but I grew up in Eatonville, and we had a swimming pond here on the Lake Sibylla where the dock was. There was a diving board there. I don't know if you remember, John. There's a diving board there. Right here by the outdoors bathrooms. And but we got a little pass. 25% you can get your Maitland in. So we used to walk to Eatonville and show the guys our in, so we can come ahead and down off the diving board. So it's always been a great place to live in. And thank you very much for your support.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next part of the agenda. You guys are welcome to stay, but you don't have to.
This is the first letter. 2 copies of it or just one? Okay.
Okay. Mark, is there any old business?
No, sir.
Okay. I was going to ask, maybe we can hold it to please remind me to ask about the property appraiser. So we can do that at the very end. All right, consent agenda. Mark, would you like to, actually, we can ask the council members, does anybody on the council have any items they'd like to pull from the consent agenda? None. Does anybody from the public like to comment on consent agenda items 3 through 5? Okay, seeing none, let's close the public period, and motion will be in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, Laura, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Mayor Reynolds.
Aye. Okay, consent agenda is adopted. We'll move on to the public period. Would anybody from the public like to address the council on any item of general concern? Now's your moment. Okay. Seeing none, let's close the public period and move on to decisions. We have an ordinance regarding Traffic Light Safety Act. Lori, would you please read the ordinance title?
Ordinance number 1440, an ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, repealing Chapter 18, Article 2, Division 4 Traffic Light Safety Act of the City Code, providing for codification, conflicts, severability, and an effective date.
Okay, thanks. Mark?
Yeah, sure, just briefly, as we talked about the last meeting, our Traffic Light Safety Act was initiated in 2010, with the first cameras were installed at the intersection of Maitland Avenue and Marion Way, over by the Jason Shalom Orlando. It'll always be the JCC to me. I made the same mistake at the statement of the city address with the chamber. As the program expanded, we monitored 10 approaches at 6 intersections. However, with the construction of the I-4 Ultimate project, those cameras were reduced to 4 cameras at 3 intersections, monitoring 4 approaches. Again, as we talked about last meeting, we're having some issues with our current vendor that's going to require us to go out to bid for this. That coupled with the fact that there's going to be some additional regulatory requirements that come down from the legislature. They're outlined in the staff report. They're going to make it a little more challenging to continue the program. And the philosophy behind the program has always been, when it was adopted to now, is to reduce the number of traffic accidents at these monitored intersections by penalizing drivers who run the red lights or do not come to a complete stop on right turning movements. Attached to the staff report, you can see the police department statistics showing that over the last couple of years there are no negligible reductions in accidents. There's actually an increase in accidents at one of the intersections. So the program does not make money, it's revenue neutral. If we move away from the program, it will free up one of our community service officer positions that review those infractions to get on the road and do some more police type work. So staff's recommending adoption of the ordinance on the second reading.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark? Okay. Does anybody from the public have any comment on this item? Seeing none, let's close the public hearing. And if there's no further discussion, the motion will be in order.
I move to adopt ordinance 1440 on second reading, repealing Chapter 18, Article 2, Division 4, Traffic Light Safety Act of Maitland Code of Ordinances as presented.
We have a motion.
A second?
And a second. Laura, please call the roll.
Councilmember Wurzel?
Aye.
Councilmember Wild?
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Mayor Lambert?
Aye. Okay, it passed on second reading. On to the next item, which is reset terms for resident advisory boards. Mark, would you please introduce this item?
Sure, just briefly, over the last couple of years, some of our city boards have gotten out of sync with their appointments. There have been some issues over the years. It's been something that I've looked at since I've been here, and when Ms. Hollingsworth was hired as the city clerk, we talked about the best way to adjust the boards to get them all in sync with each other. What most cities do is have board appointments typically at the first part of the year. So what we're proposing is that we take all of our existing boards, reset those terms so the appointments are in January, so they're not happening throughout the year. This does not result in the reduction of any board member having less time on the board. Actually, it increases a few board members' times on the board. So what we're recommending to address the situation is to reset our existing board structure to have appointments for the first meeting of January. We still have staggers within the boards, so there still be a rotation within the boards, but just have them set up for a January appointment. So one of our meetings in January will just deal with board appointments and then be done with it for the year unless there's a resignation during the year. That's sort of the first part of the request tonight. The second part that we decided to put in here, because we did have this discussion about the Transportation Advisory Board back in June. We're sort of in a unique position to have a Transportation Advisory Board that has 4 transportation, or 3 transportation engineers, a civil engineer, who's a public works director for the largest city in Orange County on the board, and we have a former elected official with a great deal of history with transportation issues on the board. The way the rotation works and term limits work, 2 of those folks are required to rotate off the board. We have no one that had applied for that board that was the number 1 choice definitely, or that had any real experience with transportation issues. So we're kind of blessed to have this board together. So what, if we're going to keep the TAB in its current structure, something had to be done because of the charter requirements for term limits for all boards. They're basically the same as the city council. So the suggestion that we're making is to reset the Transportation Advisory Board as an ad hoc committee. This is kind of a nice time to do that because we'll be able to take advantage of the skills of those 5 individuals that would be on the ad hoc committee to address what I was calling today the Maitland Area Transportation Study 2.2, the real study, the second part of what DOT started over the last 3 years, having the MPO take it over to have them act as a steering committee, because we all know the transportation issues are very important just because our physical location and the roadway network that we are blessed and cursed with at the same time. So having these individuals act as a steering committee for that project would certainly prove beneficial. We've already had that discussion with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the staff of Metro Plan understands our situation we're in and would love to be able to work with these folks as we work through this process over the next several months. So that would be our recommendations, to keep the Transportation Advisory Board together, but reset it as an ad hoc committee.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any questions, Mark?
Mark, I see in here that it says that we haven't found any people to replace the people who stepped off with similar qualifications.
Yes.
But there's no qualifications needed to be on this board.
That don't have the same qualifications as
The people who left.
people are leaving, that are uniquely qualified.
Yeah.
I think we all know, we've been around long enough to know that this is the first time we've had the benefit of having transportation people on a Transportation Advisory Board that really can sink their teeth into it. And they served a very valuable role, sort of in an ad hoc capacity during the last transportation study for the Vision Zero plan. So it's nice to be able to take advantage of the talents you have in the community.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to have those talents to be on this board. That's the
You're not
clarity I want to
required,
say.
it's just a benefit.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and I guess that was one important key out. We have talked to all 5 members of the board. Actually, I had a conversation with one of them just before the city council meeting tonight. They've all agreed to serve on the ad hoc committee. They felt it was probably a better model that just calls them together when they're needed with a specific task to accomplish what the city council wants. So we have reached out to them and contacted them to make sure they were willing to serve in that capacity.
So with this also, you're saying you want to put everything in line, would this make all the other boards an ad hoc committee also?
And that's not what we're proposing, just
Okay.
just the TAB.
Just want to make sure. I'll let everybody else ask questions and I'll make my comments.
Okay, so really you're looking for 2 things. One is just to kind of reset the board terms as they are. Everybody would be able to serve out the term that they have on each of these boards. They'd be able to serve out the term they currently have. You know, imagine some would be burdened with the extra time on there because they probably would have to serve until they're replaced. Okay, so for us though, or for any future council, I guess what that means is rather than kind of sprinkling it through the year when we kind of have, you know, a random board appointment, we would end up in January appointing anywhere between 8 and 10 or 12 people that to go. So it would be a pretty intensive month for us to kind of to go through and figure. But I mean, that may have, you know, beneficial effects. It might be easier for everybody to understand this is the time of year when you would apply, rather than just kind of waiting for the clerk to call you up because you know it's June 12th and by the way we have a vacancy. So everybody would know that this is kind of the season for getting on board, and that might be beneficial. The downside, I'm sure it's the downside. It's just a lot more. It would take up a lot more of our time in January to do all this.
And I think it would probably, when Lori and I were talking about this, it might be helpful because you have your first, second, and third choices. So you would have all those laid out before you to understand where the people's priorities are as your main appointments at one time. So you'd have that benefit also.
Okay. And is there a way to do it, if we weren't to do it all in January, could we continue to, would we end up achieving the same thing if we did it through the year, or?
It just administratively, it becomes a little bit easier for the city clerk's office. Like, it's considerably easier to track the city clerk's office.
Okay. All right.
I was going to ask the same, what if you, and I'm asking not, this is by no means any kind of leading question or judge, what about doing it like twice a year to kind of address some of John's concerns, like we did once, January 1st, July 1st kind of a thing, where you had, I'm just concerned a little bit about just how many people you could get to apply at one time in order to fill all the spots.
Well, people can apply at any time.
I get it.
So
I get it, but
it's a
sometimes
rolling
people are
application.
motivated when they see a position coming open. They are motivated to put in when they see it coming open. I know that. People are, I just don't know if it's,
I mean, it's which boards and how do you determine that, and then,
well, but once you set it, you can move on. I get it. Like up front, you have to decide which ones are January 1st versus July 1st, and then you maybe have half the positions on the board or whatever. I'm just thinking it makes, I don't know what makes it, I get it from the administrative following of it. I just don't know about getting enough applicants at any given time. And I get what you're saying is that they'll all come in over the year, but I don't know if once a year is.
Yeah, and just for in terms of getting the word out, several times a year in newsletters and social media posts, we put out the call for applications, and if a board member would reside in midterm, we put that out to scare up applications also. So we're communicating that during the year also.
I feel like, and this is just like anecdotal from essentially lots of people, I'm sure each of you sitting up here, a lot of people have asked me just randomly throughout the last 3 years how they get on a board or how they get involved. And first of all, I've never really known. I always have to come back and ask, like, okay, for this board, when is that? And so it is really confusing, and I've never been able to find somewhere, and obviously part of that's communication, where it's like clearly laid out, except for when it comes up. So I'm not sure how many people under the current system are motivated by it coming up, because I don't think they know when it's coming up. Now, that could be still done in a model where you have it twice a year and you just communicate it more. And even having it 2 set times a year and splitting them in half or whatever would be better, I think, than what it currently is. It doesn't seem like it would be a ton of work on our end, like from council, staff, I don't know, but since you guys are recommending it, I assume you're cool with it, but I think that it would be helpful, because I think people just sort of put those applications in, and sometimes by the time we're considering them, they did that like a year and a half ago. Do you know what I mean?
But that could be the same, that's going to be the same, if not worse, under this one, because under this one, under currently, the people are coming off staggeredly, so you could submit.
no, they're still coming to stagger.
Yeah.
I understand it, but you could put in, my point is, so if you put in February or March, it won't be until the next January.
Unless there's a vacancy of someone.
Who leaves. But people, to her point, I'm more worried about finding the people to do it. I'm just.
As I said, more structured one way or the other. I don't think from my perspective, makes a difference. Like I said, I think it would be better than it currently is, even if we did it.
So,
I have a question.
So part of my thought on that, and sort of Councilmember Wild's comment on that, is we have brought several times in the last year to 2 years where we have 7+ applicants for the same board, and then we're asking you to choose one or choose 2, and then they kind of get held in a holding pattern until. So my point was, if we have 4 coming off on a board and we have 7 or so applicants, you're choosing more out of that pool instead of just the one, and then we're holding on to these and holding on, and it's a better rotation of people, and people feel like they're getting seen or heard and put on a board a little bit more than kind of the one-offs that we've kind of done. If that makes sense.
Well, I understand where this is going, but here's my question. I'm sorry to bust off the subject here, but maybe somebody can help me understand why this needs to be an ad hoc committee if already in their bylaws it says that they shall meet as needed. So, I mean, it's already stated in their bylaws. Why do
Terms aren't set by the bylaws, terms are set in the charter, and they can only serve 2 consecutive 3-year terms. It doesn't matter in that 2-year or that 6-year period how many times they meet. So they're termed out.
Right. Yeah. Well, why can't we just change that in the constitution of the?
No, you have to change the charter.
Or the charter.
Yeah, that's a city
Yeah.
charter requirement, not a board charter.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
That would
Yes.
require a vote of the residents to change that.
Is there some sort of downside to making it ad hoc? I don't know.
We don't see one, and the board members don't see one. The
Oh.
board members think it's more efficient.
Here's what I see. I mean, if that goes ad hoc, then really the only 2 boards we have, because planning and zoning is a commission, we would only really have Lakes Advisory Board and Parks Board, because sustainability hasn't been called in over a year, and transportation goes ad hoc.
Maybe we just
So-
need more boards. But it sounds like the
Well-
transportation board, like this, that's their needs, but I would agree with you that I can think of a couple offhand that, maybe when I'm not staying up here, I'll spend my free time doing, but I agree with, I agree with you that we could have more, but,
Listen, and I think that boards are important because really, I mean, and take for example, and don't take this the wrong way, we have 3 people coming up here that have never served the city. This is usually a good starting point, like Lizzie, I, John, Mike, except for one person here, who we've all served on boards, and it's been a good way to get to an understanding of why and how everything functions within the city and the rules, and I think my time was well served, and we used to send stuff to the city council, even though they rejected a lot of it. There were a couple of other things passed, but that's kind of where I'm at. I'm a boards guy, and I in my last term here, I really want to see more people getting active with the city than just falling away from activity within the city, because this is really a way for people to get active with the city and be part of it. So I'm done. I'll get off the soapbox now, but that was it.
Well, and Mark and Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the other kind of salutary effect of making an ad hoc committee is you kind of avoid the term limits issue for the people who are there. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
So if it's just it's a regular board by the charter, when these guys who are on it, and I say guys, when they're like Cliff Tate, who's got a wealth of knowledge, and James Blackford and
Ian.
Lockwood.
Yes. Those guys are just like champions, but when they're going to be turned out, they're turned out, and they won't be able to come back onto the board. So I think if we have an ad hoc board, that it's not subject to the same rules in the charter. So you can keep calling those 3 back, or just 5 back, or whoever is most qualified. But one of the downsides of keeping the board as it is those guys are going to term out, and they're going to be ineligible to be on the board when something really important for that board is coming up, which is like this MATS 2.2. So I don't see it as much as it going away of the Transportation Advisory Board. It should be called, as you pointed out, Benjamin, it's called now only when it's needed. The ad hoc provision, I think, would also just, we would call it when it's needed.
But then you just keep the same people and you don't really rotate them off and bring in.
It's up to us, I guess, to we could pick anybody we wanted to. Just like we always do. It's our responsibility, I guess, to go through and find people who are most enthusiastic about it and most qualified.
I know a guy who was on planning and zoning that was fit perfectly in there.
So how does that work if it becomes ad hoc in terms of, I understand it gets rid of the term limits, but are there term limits, or would we have to kick someone off to put someone new there? How would that work?
It would be specific to whatever task you're asking them to do. So if it's the MATS 2.2, once they concluded that, and something else came up, you either go back to them, or if we have other people that have expressed interest.
It's like project-based.
Yes.
So here's my question. How do you keep up with them to know if somebody moved, somebody passed away, somebody just doesn't have time and won't commit to it anymore, and then you're stuck with that person?
And I think what's from what I'm understanding, because I hear that word all the time, but I never took Latin, so everyone's helping me to understand. But is that with the project base, what Mark is saying is the people who are there, or other people who have very specific career experience, which you don't need to be on Parks and Rec or necessarily planning and zoning or whatever,
Right.
Is really helpful for certain projects like the one they're doing right now. But it may be that we have a project that we want advisory board to do the transportation related in the future that isn't necessary to have that kind of experience, and then we could appoint different people or a combination, of skills, so that some projects might really require or really be useful to have like an engineer, whereas others won't, and it would just be when that project's over, they're done. And so then if they move to Alaska or whatever, then it wouldn't matter.
And we should just do that with all our boards. If we want lakes people that are just good with lakes, we should do that. If we want people in Parks and Rec, then we should just do that and not just get people who are not versed in lakes or parks.
Well, let's do this. I think we have two. This is, although it's one item, it really is at two asks. So the first is, should we reset the board terms? And the second is, let's get direction on what to do about the ad hoc transportation advisory board. And so those, am I wrong? Those two
That's
discrete
correct.
questions? Okay. So if we focus on the first one, then we can move on and just give you direction on the second one, and we're going to come back and decide about that one later.
Okay.
And Lindsay will be here, and we can have a full discussion of that. So what is the feeling, anybody's feeling on the resetting the board terms? Now we've had that discussion about whether to do it once, whether to do it twice, or whether to do it at all. Does anybody have, or, well, I guess, before we get too much further into this, is it time for public input? I think so.
Yeah.
Would anybody from the public, after hearing this such insightful discussion, want to come and set us straight on this matter? Come on, nobody? I know that we see board people out there. I mean, this is how it's been on more boards than any of us up here.
Board or board?
That's right. Okay. All right, we'll close the public period. Back to us. Does anybody have any more discussion or more?
I think I support the reset, because I understand the terminology but if someone were to drop off, just to think this through, if someone drops off in March,
Bring it to you.
you would bring it in April.
And they would either fill out the next term and be eligible for 3 more years, or fill out the remainder of that
Right.
term and be eligible for 2 years. The Constitution, the board constitution describes that process.
And depending on the board, they may not meet. I mean, we used to fill them, obviously, too, when there was some urgency on the need sometimes we would go, there would be months that would go that we wouldn't fill a position, right? So I'm just trying to think of how the theory of, I'm just playing out your theory that if you do it once a year, then that's better. But like if you have someone that drops out in March and you just filled all the spots from your January push, and it's rare, just being my recollection, it's rare that we have more people than we have. I mean, often we are filling the spots with who we've got. So I think, I'm just thinking through, like, are we setting ourselves up for then the person who misses their final meeting, they've missed too many meetings in a row, we got to fill a spot, it's now March, and
This
It's
isn't,
just-
we're not plowing new earth here. This is the way most cities actually.
I'm not.
So just so this, it's not.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think logistically. How are we going to get enough people to fill these spots? So I'm good with it. I'm good with the reset. I'm good with the once a year, and we can try it. And then if we start finding ourselves where we have to spill spots in March and April, and we realize we don't have the candidates.
besides what we do, the 5 best people to recruit people for your boards, or
I get it. I'll tell you what, I've always
sitting up here?
seen that,
And then I
like,
would know when it was time.
I'm with you. I'm interested to see how it goes. Because I do think, I like the idea and I like the thoughts of it from an organization and general standpoint. I'm just hoping I'm hoping it works.
Well, we do have quite a volume right now of applications for volunteer to serve that are teetering on the time expiration of how long we actually hold on to. So all those people get an email first that says, hey, your application military service, if you're still interested, please do this. So we're going to start off the bat with hopefully getting a lot in even before we hit.
So I'm so I think this is fine. Like I said, once, twice a year done. I'd be interested to see how it works and then we can pivot, right? I'm more interested in, I never liked when you have people, when you have the first, second, third, but you have to list them and people feel compelled to list them, but the only thing they want to do is number 1 and they don't really want to do number 2 and 3. And then we are sitting here evaluating and then no one shows up because we don't do that, and then they don't reach out. For me, I think some of you have better luck if you're reaching out maybe, but I have no idea. So I'm sitting here and we're evaluating someone, it's their second or third choice. We don't even know if they really want to do it, or did they just put it because they had to fill out the form. So I would, if we can, I'm all up for this, and then maybe over the next 11 months, we think about how do we get a better process where we understand and gauge someone's interest in actually serving on the board, and knowing that they didn't just fill it in as their second or third choice, but they really only care about parks.
I think we can do that with just wording on the application, is just list which boards you would be interested in one being your most favorite. I mean, they could put 5 if they want to in a row, or they could put 2 and just kind of list it that way.
And I personally really feel like doing it one time a year would help with what you're saying, Mike, because I agree with you in terms of process. I know myself, sometimes I've been really proactive about reaching out to people or like trying to, and other times I haven't, just based on what I have going on. And so if we knew, or whoever's sitting up here knew that, okay, this week is when we're going to be doing that.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful on both ends, also for those individuals to know, because I know that I've known people personally who were up and they didn't know until like the very last minute that they were even going to be on that agenda. And that's because of the way it works. And so this way, I think it'd just be more predictable.
Well, the thing is, like with us, around every April, somebody's coming off, somebody's coming on, good possibility. The thing with the boards is, like planning and zoning, I think somebody comes off in August. You're like, why do they come off in August, especially in the summertime, right? So I'm with Lori and saying, I think, January would be good. And everybody knows it's that January time. And it's set. You don't have to go, when am I coming off? Let me go look. I'll call Lori and see when I'm coming off.
So those appointments we made though in December, technically. Everybody's like
Term off in December, appointed in January.
Yeah.
All right, so then your
So the decision process would be in December.
January 2025 through December of 2027. That way you're getting 3 full years.
So the appointments would be made in December. We wait until they were empty.
Well, they serve until,
Some people are going to be extended.
because you gotta remember, a
Like
third
planning.
of them are gonna be reappointments, because
It'll be-
they're
we'll have
off
to
for
figure
6
it out.
years.
You won't be here.
No. Thanks.
Going back in a couple years, right?
We'll see. All right. Well, so what do you want? I'm good to try. I think it's a good
Be
idea.
appointed.
Okay,
Gotta take that
I need
off.
a motion and
What's that?
Are you making the motion to reset the advisory?
I would make a motion to reset the advisory boards, the time period as presented, yeah. So I
I'll
think
second
we broke it
that.
down into 2 motions, right?
Yeah.
2 issues.
2 issues.
I'll second that.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Lori, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Warzel?
Aye.
Councilmember Wiles?
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Mayor Lambert?
Aye. Okay, we are set. Now, any discussion about direction to the clerk and city manager about how to handle the transportation advisory board?
So from a transportation advisory board, the issues that they deal with, we're not asking them to, they are giving more targeted and project type specific roles, right? Like their role isn't like planning and zoning where there's interim issues that come up, or even Lakes Advisory Board where there's issues that come up. Like what we're asking the Transportation Advisory Board to give advice on and recommendations are more project related. Is that?
That's the way it has turned out over the last 5 years.
I think when the board was originally formed, it was more like the others, and I think that's part of the reason for the proposal is it has evolved into more of an ad hoc committee as it is.
So given that kind of nature, and I understand Vance has always been a proposal of the boards. One of the things that I think has been challenging is when the boards don't have a mission, like you don't have a reason to meet, but you feel like you're supposed to meet because that's what boards do, then it provides a little bit of aimless direction. Whereas if it's truly on a committee basis that are brought in on a project and specific nature, it gives them more purpose and actually more value than just sitting out there as a board that they feel like they're unappreciated. Because I think if you're on a board and you don't meet and you don't get really asked your opinion on anything, your role can feel diminished. Whereas if you're on a committee, which is the same real advisory function, and you're called to actually give specific advice based on your expertise, I think it actually gives potentially more purpose to the whole board or committee. But I don't think it actually diminishes the role. I think it actually gives them a purpose and a more defined role.
And you probably will remember this. We went to lunch one time 10 years ago. We had the same discussion about boards and ad hoc, and I think we're going to go back down the same way that probably the conversation was then. But I see it as kind of more transparency for people on the boards that know what the city's doing. And then when those times come in, then yes, they'll be needed. I think you're already going to have the city engineers doing a lot of the work and saying, here is what we're doing, just as you do on lakes and parks. I mean, none of those people are all pros, but it's good to get it if we can. I mean, like for us, we should be going out, finding some people who are doing this and say, hey, we'd love to have you on the board. I'm sure that's how most of these people got on this board anyways, was somebody reached out to them and asked them to join. So I've always looked at it, every board is not about using them for this, but also that there is knowledge that they can take back to their community and their neighborhoods and say, this is what's going on in the city, we're working on this and this and this. So it's more like information, and then again, bringing those citizens in to be part of it and learning why Maitland does this, why are the roads like this, because we're up here, people talk to us and we're like, well, it's not that easy, because how many people have come up to y'all and said, well, why don't they do this, blah, blah, and you're like, well, slow down, it's because you have to go through this process and this process and this process. So for that reason, I'd be more in support of the board.
Okay.
What's the advantage though of having it? I'm still trying to understand. So under your line of thinking, the board versus committee, it's better as a board because of what?
I think what he's saying, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, if our brains are as connected by osmosis as I think. I think what he's saying is that, I think it's like, they're saying because of the way it is, because it rarely meets and it's project-based, it's acting as an ad hoc already, whereas Vance is saying he takes issue essentially with it acting that way, that he wishes all boards met more frequently, and even when they weren't being called for some special purpose, and so it's really more in that, and that if you go to ad hoc, then of course they're not going to meet more often because that's like the nature of this. How'd I do?
Awesome, nailed it.
So then under your theory, if you have a board meeting, what are they going to talk about?
What projects are coming up? I mean, it doesn't have to be every month. I mean, there's not been one board here that meets once a month, right? I mean, look at your sustainability, it's been over a year.
But when we were on planning and zoning, we met, for a while there, we met twice a month.
Right, because we had a lot of projects and stuff, and now planning and zoning doesn't hardly meet at all because they changed the land development code so they don't have to. So now, like, when you say, what projects, what's this project? You know, they're clueless. So it's kind of like if people know this person's on the board, then they can talk, or if they have problems, just like you. I mean, you walk, I always hear, I walk my dog, and people say this and this and this. Same thing, if you have somebody on a board, they can bring it out to the city and be the liaison between them and the city and say, hey, listen, this is a problem we're having in our community.
I think one of the issues is like everyone up here is inherently super involved and like excited to spend time on these things, obviously. And I don't know how much interest there is. Like, I agree with you in an ideal world. I don't know how much interest there is across the board of enough people who like really are jazzed to meet every month or whatever when there's nothing to talk about.
Right.
So I don't know which comes first, chicken or egg, and I don't know enough about it. But I do know, and I've talked to some of the same people that you have who are team like meet who's one of them on tab, you know, to meet all the time. And I do agree that that's ideal. Like, I do think ideally people would be super engaged and involved, and we'd have a cross section of like all of that. But it's been every time in my last 3 years that someone has given feedback or asked questions, you know, basically complained about something.
Right.
I have always found the board that corresponded with their issue, found the meeting, and I have not once ever, which is sort of like my secret trick now that I am leaving, I can put that on record. But you know, and so it's just the nature of how most people are. I don't understand it, you don't, none of it, we all ran for office, but I do think that that's part of the issue. And then if you can't get people to rise to our ideals, then we end up and then we've termed out the people who actually cared or had any interest, then that's the issue. So I see it both ways. I don't know how it would work in either direction, but.
Right, but to the part of you just attend, that's, I mean, that's never been the way it is. It's always, there's a chairman, and the city calls the chairman and says, hey, listen, we really don't have any projects going on. You know, do you feel good with, you know, just taking this month off, or it's summertime or December, you don't have any, you know. So, I mean, you're looking at maybe 4 times a year with this, but with the ad hoc, you could go 2 or 3 years between projects. So
But you could go to, let me add, I didn't look at this, Mark. On the boards, is the number of board members set by charter or by the bylaws?
By the bylaws, Constitution.
and they got 5 on this.
Yes.
But we could, so to amend the number of board members could be done on a city council vote, not a, I mean, I was just trying to hybrid those ideas. If you could have essentially reduce some of these boards to 3 members and then 3 full voting members, and then have, when TAB meets, how often are they asked to actually vote on something where the vote is where there's an actual vote versus just a recommendation?
Once a year for chairman, vice chairman, all the required meetings.
But other than that, so like if they were going to review the MAT study or do whatever, it's
There would
not.
probably be 3 or 4 meetings involved with that.
But would they actually vote on something?
It would make a recommendation to the city council, ultimately, yes, that's what their job is. They're not voting on to make a recommendation, just all their advisory boards do.
But would they have to, I'm just trying to figure out if you could have members of that board that could continue to serve.
I'm not sure you can under the charter restrictions.
But they're not
still on
members.
the board. They're not.
I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to get us to the point where I get the point, you're losing talent.
And this is coming from us, because we're the messenger. This is coming from the TAB also.
Right.
They're the ones that discussed this and wanted to move in this direction because they wanted to stay involved. So we're acting as messenger for obviously the 2 members that are turned out,
Right.
but the other members also.
And we've talked to those people and they would come back?
Absolutely.
And they didn't get a call from the town, the city, saying, hey, we would like to go in this direction.
Yeah, we talked to all 5 of them.
No, but I think what I also asked is like, so
Was this the city's idea, or did TAB at a meeting go, we want to become an ad hoc?
No, we've talked to them about ways that they can continue to serve, and this is really the only realistic way that they can continue to serve under the charter restrictions that we have.
For those two that are
For those two that are terming
Are
out.
they in the middle, they're in the middle of a project right now?
We're just starting.
That 2.2?
2.2, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just starting. And we negotiated, we're finishing negotiating the scope of services with the MPO staff, and then they're starting to get ready for the kickoff.
Who do you lose, and who is termed out?
Ian Lockwood and Dale McDonald are expired. Their terms expire this April. There's a couple that say they expired last
That
year.
was Cliff and James are off the board right now. They have returned out.
And then only Dale is eligible to be reappointed.
And have we gone out and really like put this out on social media saying we have these positions that are much needed if we don't have anybody who has put in for them?
We haven't done anything because you tabled it in June.
Yeah, you asked for this to come back specifically to have this very discussion.
Oh, okay.
So Ian and Dale are rolling off in April? Is that what
It says April 2025, but Dale's eligible for another term and Ian is not.
And James and Cliff are off.
Already off, but still willing to serve.
So there's only one person who has another year on their term,
Who's that?
Corey Knight.
I'm listening to this more, and I'm not sure the functional difference between the board. I mean, really, and I'm trying to listen to Vance's concerns, and it seems to me that the board could meet just as frequently as, or the frequency of the meeting is not dictated by whether you call it a committee or board. Because a committee could decide they want to meet 4 times in a month if they wanted, if there was something pressing to talk about, and so could a board. And the committee could decide not to meet. So I'm trying to, I hear what Vance is saying, and I get the wanting to push community involvement, which is what we all want. I'm just not sure that one gives an advantage of that over the other, whereas the only disadvantage of the board is that people have to come on. But the practical kind of administration and what they deal with, I'm not sure that I see a functional difference one way or the other. But if Vance thinks the optics of being a board somehow give people, or encouraging people to engage more, if that's what you're thinking, Vance?
Yeah.
Then I'd be interested to hear more about that, if we think that's actually the case, that people would be less engaged in a committee versus a board.
Well, I think when you go, we talked about when you go and you rank your committees, when you fill out the application, I assume tab wouldn't really be on there anymore as an option if it was an ad hoc, since you know, and so it would reduce like opportunities for engagement in that sense. But on the other hand, I don't know, I assume projects come up on any of the respective boards, you know, if Parks and Rec knows that there's new parks coming up, or there's a Parks and Rec survey, or
There's a park.
yeah,
So-
you know, so I guess all of them could be considered project-based to a degree. But just thinking about, I guess, if someone had an issue with, yeah, I don't know.
So if I go to sign up, and to your point, like you have to list what you would like to do, and my option is you're only called when needed, why do I want to sign up for that? Because I'm coming to you, to the city saying, I want to participate in something, I want to be active with my city. And if you're just going to call me when needed, I wouldn't have any interest in joining up with that.
But that's already what their charter says, but
I mean, if it's
This wouldn't
ad
be
hoc,
an
you know that you're just going to get called every once in a while.
yeah, this option wouldn't even be on there.
Right. Oh, so you couldn't even sign up for it? You'd have to go and find it.
It would be more like, oh, we're recruiting now, like once 2.2 is, I'm just adopting that now. Once 2.2 is over, they would sunset, and then there wouldn't be a committee until we had a new thing we thought we needed it for, and then we would like theoretically put out the social media and the feelers that we need a new ad hoc committee, and I'm sure go back to some of these people as well if they were interested.
Yeah, so that would leave us with just lakes and parks around.
And sustainability.
They haven't met, they're not really being they haven't met for over a year.
That is what I read today, yes.
Okay, so for this particular, well, I guess here's a very practical concern rather than kind of the theoretical concern, is we have this study, and it's going to be very, the MAT study, I guess, is going to be very heavy in kind of transportation engineer speak and agency speak and bureaucracy, and, you know, it's just going to, we've all seen, we've seen, I don't know if anybody can really claim they've actually read a transportation study, but it's going to require, I mean, for our part, I would feel more comfortable if I had people in Maitland who were transportation engineers who understood what the transportation department was saying to them when they hand them a big document, say, okay, here's what we think we're going to do for Maitland. And if I were me, I mean, or anybody who doesn't have a transportation background, it's going to be a long haul to figure out what that actually means, and then a longer haul to figure out what are my options in responding to that, because I don't even know how to respond to that. Somebody who, you know, the Cliff Tates of the world, or the Cliff and James Blackwood and Ian Lockwood and Dale have been around long enough to know, you know, what's going on. And we're going to lose all those guys. The four of those guys can't come back. I mean, they can't be participating in this MAT study, right? I mean, they're...
Unless they just did as residents.
Okay, but then they can't make a recommendation to us. They won't, so...
Not going to be reviewing the report and making a recommendation.
Right, so that's what happens now under our current system. I guess if we instituted an ad hoc system, these professionals who are actually traffic engineers and Maitland residents could participate in that particular study. And that's going to mean something in Maitland soon here. I mean, I think, you know, the practical reality of it is, you know, we have a transportation advisory board, and you think that, well, yeah, everybody in Maitland, all of us included, drive around a lot in Maitland, and we all feel we see the weaknesses and the strengths in the you know, how long a traffic light is, and it's driving me nuts, or, you know, I've seen that turn, there's idiots making that turn again, or whatever. You think you're going to go into the transportation advisory board in Maitland and cure it? It's just not going to happen. I mean, we have a limited ability to deal with FDOT's roads, state roads, county roads, and, you know, so it's not a very, it's almost a bait and switch. I mean, you know, you think it's a transportation advisory board, I'm going to go in and advise on transportation. Well, good luck. I mean, because you just have very little, you know, it's unlike Parks and Rec, where if you go in and you're on the Parks and Rec board, we all experience Parks and Rec, and you have, it's not an arcane language, you know, and it's not, you know, beset with all these Byzantine rules. I mean, so you can affect what happens in Parks and Rec by saying, you know, let's prioritize, you know, children's playgrounds, or let's prioritize, and then that'll happen to the CIP. You get on the Transportation Advisory Board, good luck. I mean, you know, but this is a moment when actually this particular MAT study will be, you know, it'll have a functional impact on how Maitland moves its traffic. And so
Right.
the people are going to be able to impact this. So I would like to see some of these professionals back on board, and as it stands, we're not going to be able to put them back on.
We could also solve this problem too by just having a MAT advisory committee, right? We could put together an advisory committee that dealt with.
Advisory committee to the board?
No.
Oh.
Well, that's a different issue, but I'm just saying you can, but that's essentially what we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
What we're going to be doing, whatever you do with TAB, what I'm saying is, TAB is going to be whatever it is, but actually what we're doing is we're going to put together an advisory committee, and based on what I'm hearing, it's going to be a finite term of looking at the MAT study. So really what we could be doing here is just talking about putting together a MAT study committee, ad hoc committee, and that look at this TAB issue actually distinct, because that's really what it is. It's the role of TAB and what it is, because what we're actually talking about is putting together a committee to look at the MAT study. That's what I'm hearing. So.
But you're also losing the TAB, and what role would the TAB in relation to the advisory committee? You have a standing TAB that you would, I'm assuming, fill positions on, but now you have an ad hoc committee.
But that's my point. That's actually, so the point is to say we can make a committee that's going to deal with the MAT study, which I think under Vance's thought, you don't want to lose certain talent under what I've heard. You want to have So what then would TAB do? And I think what Vance is saying, because we want to put together a committee that would address the math study, you'd want to potentially have some residents that have technical interest and expertise in this. So then, if we, Vance, I get your request for.
I think there's this thing where we're saying they can never get back on, and I don't know if that's true. I looked through the things today, and I never saw that. I looked through the bylaws today, and right now, Cliff Tate and James Blackford expired in 4/24, right? And so in April, they would be eligible to come back on because that's been 1 year, correct?
Yeah. I'm not sure how that works with the reset.
So they have to be off for a year? Is that right?
Follow the same rules as city council.
So, yeah, it's just the whole thing. I mean, it almost scared me. I'm like, what do you mean they can never come back?
Well, never, they just sit out for a year.
Yeah.
So if that, they would lose a year, but you're right, if this is 4/24, so they were off for 4/24, they can come back on at 4/25.
And when are we expecting the study, Mark?
The scope of services is already put together, so we're working on the kickoff right now.
So ask me, Lori.
Is that circulating the role of the 2 terms then? Because then if there's no vacant, we didn't appoint anyone and there was a vacancy there.
They have to sit out a year. Doesn't matter if you fill the seat or not.
Okay, so when will the vacancies come back up?
Well, they'll come back up in January now.
So we wouldn't be able to put them back on
Because
until.
we just changed it.
No. Actually, I think under the term, they would just get to serve even longer, right? Based on that, because they wouldn't.
Well, they couldn't come back on until April.
For those who are on, yes, but those who are off, I think that's what they're talking about. Is those who are off wouldn't be reappointed until January.
No, but they would come on in April. They would come on in April.
We have vacancies. They would be eligible.
So if you have vacancies,
We have
you could appoint in April. You have
Yeah.
vacancies now.
And then you'd have a full team till next January.
At which point their terms would get reset.
Well, the terms have been reset, so,
They got reset, so they'd be whatever they are.
yeah.
And you'd have all 5.
So Edendale will serve for the rest of 2025, and then they're off for a year. And then,
No, Dale's only in his first term.
Dale's in his first
So he's
okay.
So Dale would, so let's just say for Dale, for example, so Dale gets, his terms expires in April, he can be reappointed. Let's say he gets reappointed.
No, he's already extended until December. That's what you did with the first motion.
Okay, so he gets extended till December, so then if he gets reappointed, that would be when it happened.
And then, yes. in the
Okay,
January.
so the person that, so the person who, but that, then how's that different than the new person who gets appointed in April? When, because there's gonna be a vacancy.
They would,
What's the, where does their term?
serve out the vacant,
You don't have a term in that seat because nobody's been appointed to it.
and now we're resetting.
So when you make, what I would do in that situation is if you were to appoint this year, I would make that appointment specific to the time left. So I would make that appointment through December of 2025 and make that. So if you were to fill those this year or any other board you might have that same situation on, if you have an existing vacancy based on what you just did with the extension, those vacancies, you would just fill them. When you fill them, you would fill them until the end of this year so that you get them on cycle.
So they would get the benefit of the extended term.
Yeah, and then the question becomes if they want to. Do they have to reapply?
Right, but that was the whole thing. You said that Cliff Tate and James Blackford are wanting to be
In
active.
an ad hoc status. That's the question that was presented to them. Do they want to serve another 3-year term? I don't know. That's a question for them.
If you're an ad hoc committee, are you subject to the same sunshine rules?
Yes.
They're making a recommendation to the city council.
Only while they're open.
Only while it's in session, yeah.
And then they sunset, and there's no more sunshine.
There you go.
See how that works. Beautiful thing.
Okay, do we have direction on this? But there's, okay.
Like where I am right now, I would literally go with anybody. You know, because I don't,
I mean, do we want to, I don't know, I mean, somebody could not be here next time, but it was like, you know, we could table it till we get the 5th, but like I said, but you might not be here next one.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Where are you on this, John?
I guess looking at the recent history of the Transportation Advisory Board, which is not to meet for long periods of time, because there's,
As needed.
yeah, as I said, so much of our transportation network here is just baked in, right? And there's just so much you can affect. So there's, I don't know, I mean, if you were to rename it to be, local traffic and transportation advisory or something like that, and people could complain about speeders on their street, and put, speed bumps on. I mean, that's something we could do. I mean, that would give people some input on it. But I think as it's currently constituted, is the idea that it's going to affect traffic flow through the city. I don't see the need for that board, except on an ad hoc basis. But I don't feel that strongly about it. I mean, I understand, I appreciate Vance's position. It's nice to have a board. And one of the other functions of the board is, those people go and disseminate to their neighbors how things actually operate in the city. And it kind of gives the feeling that there is a knowable thing out there and it can be affected. I just think transportation is an unusual. I mean, it might have been the history of this might have been we put it together when we used to be able to control more around the city, and we were still kind of building roads and affecting traffic. But so anyway, the point is I don't have a problem turning this into an ad hoc committee, and I'm kind of with Lori though. I don't feel that strongly about it. I mean, I think it serves a function either way.
How many, what's the census of other cities in the area about? Do they have transportation advisory boards at a true board level?
Not Winter Park. I think that's why we ended up with our transportation advisory board is Winter Park put together a transportation advisory board and played ball the leader with them.
Okay.
Are they still at it?
they have lots.
Have a tree board.
We're no longer following leader on that.
I like a tree board.
Yeah. Well, because to me, when I think of transportation, I think of this is like traffic, which is what we're talking about in terms of there's not a whole lot we can control, and the things that we do control, we convene these special things for. And then I think of things that reduce traffic, like pedestrian friendly or bike friendly things, and that's really falls under Parks and Rec, or theoretically could be its own board altogether, altogether. But I don't know that it falls under transportation so much in terms of the things we want to do, which are encouraging non-motorized transportation. Does that make sense?
What I'm not sure either way on this, Mark, is that we've spent more time talking about the Transportation Advisory Board than they've met. So what I'm trying to evaluate is what that means for how we do this. Because I actually think, I'm not hung up on what it is. I'm hearing this. Whether you call it a committee or a board becomes less important. I think actually having it have purpose is more important. And so however we think we give a board purpose is what I would be more, whether you call it a board or a committee, is more important. And so that if that means we have a more defined role for all these boards as to what they do, because we're all sitting here saying, what does the board do? And we wanted to evaluate the MAT study, but is there anything else? And I think my issue is that I'm good with it being a board or a committee as long as what they're tasked to do is more defined. And so they should meet. I don't think a board has to meet just for the sake of meeting. But if there's not a purpose to meet, I don't think it's worth just gathering 5 people together, right?
I'm just going to say this, and this extends to the bigger picture, but I don't think, we provide a lot for our citizens to do to be active within side of the city. I mean, to Lori's point, Winter Park has a bunch of boards. I mean, they have how many people running for their city council, right? I mean, their voting percentage is high. And in Maitland, we have one of the lowest voting percentages and participation that, I mean, that it's almost funny. People are always like, what's going on in Maitland that, you know, only 12% is coming out to vote. So I think if we really got people back into being involved and giving them a voice, and the problem is, when was the last time an advisory board gave us any advice? Maybe we're not doing this right. Maybe it's us. Maybe we need to look and say, what are we doing with our advisory boards? Are we running these right or not? Because this is what I hear. I hear, well, you know, they don't meet. We haven't got anything from them. Well, why is that? Are we doing it wrong?
I think that was the question.
So yeah,
I'm not sure if
and
we're
then we
doing
need
it
an ad hoc committee, and then they don't have to come for, I mean, then they're not really participating in anything, and we're just using them as we need them. And I understand, John, and I got your point, that this is a specialty and it's important. But I'm just saying, again, where I started this was, this is in general. I mean, you know, we started out with a bunch of boards, and now we only have 2 boards who meet. So I don't know if we're doing this
I
wrong
think
or
we're all
what.
kind of on the same page. And
Yeah.
I hear Mike saying the same thing as you. It's just like, this is allowing this to come up, this conversation, and we all are on the same page about it. I think it's just whether or not this particular issue will solve that. I did pull up just our neighbors since we were talking about it, and their transportation advisory board. Looks like their charter requires that it include a transportation professional engineer and a professional planner as part of it, you know, so. And there's good and bad with people being super involved. Winter Park also has a lot of more conflict and a lot more long meetings because of that and things like that, which, you know, nothing's objectively good or bad. But
Should have been on planning and zoning. That went until 11 o'clock at night.
But I do think it's a goal, you know, that I'm certainly on board with, and I hear everyone, I don't hear anyone say anything different in terms of like brainstorming going forward. What can we do, or what are we capable of doing as a council to like encourage more involvement, you know, because it sounds like there's a lot of different solutions, but maybe it's just not here. But your point's well taken, the actual root point.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know how you, yeah, this one is,
Tricky.
I'm not hung up, I'm more, yeah.
I'm good with it. I mean, if it's going the way that we have, that I would suggest we just keep it this way for now. And I think we need to do a review of how we treat all our boards.
Yeah, and I guess, it's kind of, you're asking what their portfolio is, right? I mean, so what are they doing? If it's the Transportation Advisory Board, they really about professional planners and professional traffic engineers who can kind of, you know, get out there and flex their muscle in 1792 and railroad tracks. That's great. You know, and I guess I misspoke a little bit earlier. I think they also did a good job when we did a kind of a local study through Domerick about, you know, traffic improvements in cut-through, because there were a lot of local complaints from people who lived over there about whether people were cutting through from Seminole County through Domerick, getting out to Horatio and going out that way. And we actually did a study, and so, and Ian Blackwood, was it Ian?
Yeah, Ian Blackwood, yeah.
Was, you know, instrumental in getting that done. So there was a very local aspect of that. That was a worthwhile thing for the Transportation Advisory to do.
Didn't they also do the quick study, the FDOT Maitland Avenue study that they did years ago?
They were involved in the first Matt's go around. Yeah, and they had an aspect of that involved there.
But that wasn't included in the original map study. And the CRA downtown master plan with the CRAs, like the CRAB, made the recommendation to City Council on that. That didn't go through TAG.
But to your point, Vance, I mean, it's like, what are you going to give them to do? I mean, if you say, well, we don't have anything to meet about this month, is it because the scope of what they're supposed to be tackling has been so limited that they don't have any reason to meet? Or maybe there just is no reason to meet. Maybe things are going fine, and or do you need to empower them to do more things? And so, I mean, that's a different. I don't know how we get to that point. I mean, I guess it's somebody has to have an opinion up here about how that goes. I mean, and I don't, for instance, the sustainability board, the advisory board was a good idea, I think, at the time, but it was mostly focused on, energy consumption and things like that, right? So I think people, I think we kind of reached a somewhat of a conclusion on it. Lakes is going to be an ongoing thing. Parks is going to be a very important thing. I don't see any of those going away. And I don't know who else we would, what other subject matter in the city deserves a board or an ad hoc committee for that.
Yeah, I know like Warner Park has, I just know this, I don't know what boards they have, and I'm just using them as an example, but I know they, have like tree and landscape, and then also their Lakes Advisory deals with boat docks and other building items on the lake where we've limited ours to water quality. So we kind of tied their hands, and it's like you can't get a recommendation because all you're doing is dealing with water quality.
Well, we all know how fun boat docks are to deal with.
Yeah.
Look, I think that the idea should be that we have to have roles defined. It seems to me like the balance is that, John, you've identified kind of the boards that seem to have more routine meetings and reasons to meet, and I think you've identified 3 of them. Then it seems like the other ones are more, there's a commission and boards. I know, Vance, you don't.
Yeah.
But the other ones seem to be committees that seem to me that instead of actually looking at this, again, I don't see that calling it a committee versus a board is degrading the impact or the usefulness of the committee versus the board. And so I think that if anything, what this just potentially does is it gives more specificity and reason for those committees to exist, which I think could give them more purpose. And if there was projects along the way that you could then, if the council looked at this more of saying, hey, let's form a committee and to evaluate and study this, and it was a defined scope, and then the committee got together, it would actually give that committee more of a purpose and a reason to meet, which I think would actually potentially encourage engagement and purpose. And so could be more, you could have just as many committees or more than we have to replace the boards that we're thinking that we would sort of transition into committees. I don't know that that's negative. I haven't seen that that's potentially a negative to call a committee versus a board.
We've already set what the parameters are for those, and we said, all right, it's not about, and I'll take Lakes because I know Lakes, and Lindsay was here, she could probably do PRAP. But, it's like, you're not talking vegetation, you're not talking anything within the 100-foot line of the lake, you're not talking about boat docks. Your only discussion that they have is water quality.
So different issues, so I think.
So I'm going down around.
So what are your?
It sounds like maybe we need to reevaluate, and I don't know who does it or when or how, like what the committees are, and like you said, what they do and all of that, because I think that just having boards there that, like you're saying, don't have anything to do, or that everyone, if we don't really know what they do, then no one who's going to sign up really knows what they do. And so in other places, it's, you can follow those trends in the Florida Trend magazine or through the League of Cities or whatever. There are different boards that are more trendy in different times. Like there are public art or youth councils, things like that are more common now. And that wasn't there 10 years ago. But if you have a board like public art or you create new boards and committees, that might be the thing that motivates someone to say, oh, I don't know about transportation, but I like art or whatever, you know what I mean? So it sounds like that's probably a better solution than trying to fit a square peg in a circle hole, like we sounds like maybe are doing with TAB here. And we're just trying to let it reflect what it already is and maybe has evolved to be, but perhaps there's like a separate project, which is reevaluating.
I agree with that. What I'm hearing is I think that it sounds to me, based on what kind of John ran through, it sounds like there's 2 boards, one commission, that seem like they have regular meetings that serve as sort of a board purpose. And the question is, the others that are potentially boards now, transition them into committees, and then clearly having a defined scope of not just the committees, but also the boards. And so as we establish a committee, clearly that committee would have a special purpose in its term, and to Lori saying the sunset time period. But the other ones, you can come up with committees as you go. If there's projects along the way that deem requirement, and I think to John's point, there was a time where the sustainability, there was a need for that insight and that recommendation. And maybe it's still there, but maybe it needs to be defined more as what that scope is and what that insight and recommendations are. So I think to answer your point of having a look at what each of these boards' purpose is and what they're supposed to meet on or not should be part of this. But I think part of this, I think right now, I would say that we should look at the boards that we should transition into committees and start that process. And then also at the same time, or maybe at a later date, then evaluate the boards and define what the roles are and responsibilities of those boards. Yeah, maybe. You don't like it, Vance?
No, I was shaking my head, yeah. I like that idea. But I think, yeah, it definitely needs a review.
So what's my recommendation was we look at this in total. So we look at and John, what do you think as far as the boards that we should look at? I mean, because right now the three board, there's lakes, parks, which we think lakes meets a couple times a year, but I think, Vance, what you're saying is lakes needs an evaluation of what their role is.
Right, and I can't talk to Peter.
I would just on Vance's point, if we're going to be doing that, I would just caution you on giving lakes a role in the permitting process where we already have regulations.
Yes.
Where it would be adding a level of subjectivity.
And I'm fine with that.
I don't think you want to get.
Right.
We've dealt with boat docks. We don't want
examples.
we don't want the lakes board to have to, in my opinion, deal with boat docks. But I get it. So I think that I would make a recommendation that we take TAB and then also look at, John, what do you think about sustainability?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at what sustainability's scope is, or what, it is, initially it was, to kind of resilience and energy consumption and, sustainable energy consumption, of the city assets, right? I mean, it was, but it means that sustainability, means a lot of things to a lot of different people.
Right.
I think that they were, so, and there were lots of great ideas, lots of great meetings, lots of, but it was, I think, perhaps it needs to kind of declare its scope a little more, cleanly, and maybe it just needs a review, because that was just created probably 5 years ago, and maybe it's time to kind of look at it and see, where it needs to go now.
Would that be best as a committee then, or as a board?
Committee meeting kind of an ad hoc?
Well, not even ad hoc. I mean, again, I'm not sure that I'm hung up on the terminology of ad hoc.
What would be the difference for you?
The difference is if it's a permanent committee, they fall under the term limits rule. That's what we're trying to solve with the TAB.
Right.
So if you call it a committee and it's permanent, it still falls under the rules.
These are defined in our charter.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds like all of those kinds of included would need, if we were going to do so, review, because I asked Mark at some point, how are these defined, like the scope during the meeting, and he said it was in the charter, which doesn't even mean it defines them well, but.
Right. Well, is it in the charter, or is it each one's charter?
Each
charter,
Yeah.
separate.
And probably, I mean, I would be interested in speaking to some of the people who actually serve on these, to see their opinions and things like that. But I mean, I do think it's a worthwhile, it's something that's always been an interest of mine as well. So how do we create?
We need to create an ad hoc committee.
Committee on committees?
Exactly.
I think a review, I think a workshop on our committees and say, what's the trends, what are, like what you said with sustainability, let's look at it and update where it is now, because 5 years ago, things change.
I think the committee thing just gives you, or ad hoc, I'm not, like I said, I'm not super hung up on because I think they add value no matter what, and I'm interested in Vance's thoughts just about whether or not one versus the other piques community involvement or not. And I'm not sure that, I don't know the effect on that. I don't know if you call it.
Build it, it will come.
I think,
Right.
let me ask this, if we go to ad hoc, we're not coming back to committee or board. If we stay board, then we can always change it in a couple weeks to whatever we want to ad hoc. And take some time and kind of really do a workshop on what are we doing with our boards? Are we using them in the best way possible? Because back to it, I've been up here 6 years and I don't know if I ever got a recommendation. Well, we probably got a recommendation through planning and zoning when it comes through Dan, but I mean, from the lakes, I don't ever recall one. So, I don't know about.
I mean, part of that, I mean, it's our responsibility, I think, also to go and look at the charters and read them. And so, I mean, I haven't done that in some time, but it could be, we could educate ourselves on what we think the charter says and what is actually happening, and what we think, how we think those charters might be changed. Like sustainability charter needs some review. And just for experience's sake, and I don't, not that anybody really cares that much, but I was, you probably heard me bang this drum before, on the Electric Power Advisory Board in 2003, and that was an ad hoc committee. That was my first experience in being, on the board and everything. And that was because it was the particular project was, we had the opportunity to buy the electric utility. And it was when, remember when Winter Park had their franchise up, and then it was our turn to franchise. So we had a purpose and a limited purpose. It was just to study that one thing. And it wouldn't make any sense to have an electric power advisory board just to kind of exist forever because, what would you be doing? I mean, you're dialing places to do every once in a while. But it had an idea. We were to make a recommendation to the city on whether or not to buy the utility. And so, we were.
How'd that recommendation go over?
It was a stellar recommendation. How did it get implemented? It's a different issue.
Right.
Yeah, that's a story in itself.
But I mean, so on that committee, I was the only punk on that committee, and it was former Mayor Hauser, who was kind of dragged out of retirement that year, and a couple of other guys who've been on city council. And so they were people in the community who have been around a while and who people trusted. Like they didn't put me mad, but so I mean that's kind of the function I think of an ad hoc committee. I mean you've got a particular problem, you go to people in your community, you let them apply. I mean I applied, and you call them out for that purpose. But
like the charter review committee.
Yeah.
Same thing.
It has
You're not going to use it once every 10 years or whatever, right?
Right. So what do we think? We think we need to go just kind of review charters independently, or with Mark, or with Lori, or and kind of pull those and have some ideas about.
I would say we all go look at the charters. I had Lori send me a few today, but then maybe we kind of have a workshop because we've been sitting here for how long now, just talking about this.
Yeah.
And then just get it done and say, all right, this is where we are, and then bring it back and put it to bed later.
Okay. Well, are you all happy getting no direction from us other than we'll be in contact to get some charters? I mean, it doesn't sound like it's something that needs to be resolved today. I mean, you want to get it resolved before the math study.
Yeah, and we could redo the scope of services on the math study and.
I will be sending all of the bylaws and all of the constitutions by next year. No.
And it's interesting, Vance, I didn't speak to them, but Mark, you did, that all the members of TAB think this is a good idea, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that, to me, says more about it, and not your Vance, I don't know if that's, I didn't talk to him, so I think maybe we'll hear more about that, but that.
Well, do we want to also, I mean, we're down a member tonight. I mean, do we need 5 to make this decision?
Well, I think if we do a workshop, we can get all 5, and then you really don't need it because we'll come to a consensus, right?
Yeah, I don't know, we need to do a workshop, or we do, at another council meeting.
Yeah, we got all 5 of us.
Yeah.
I would be good with that.
But so, Mark, I know that you didn't put this on the agenda for no good reason. So, it sounds to me like the issue is we expect sometime in the mid-spring to get this math study, and we want to dig into it, and we want to be prepared to go at that moment. And Meanwhile, we can figure out whether that's better handled by advisory or the ad hoc committee or.
No, I don't think we have a choice, but it's not our study. The MPO is doing it. They're going to be moving forward.
Right.
So we're going to be along for the ride. So we've made suggestions about how public involvement would take place using TAB because of the makeup of the TAB. So I have to go back to the MPO and see how they feel about how that can work, because we were assuming there would be a TAB with experts to provide guidance. And they've got the consultant on board, they've got their contract with the consultant, they're ready to move forward. And Alyssa and I are obviously involved in it on our side, from a technical standpoint, and from a policy standpoint.
And they're going to have it done before 3 months, you think?
They're going to, they'd like to have this done in 6 or 7 months. So bringing somebody in the middle of a process like that would be challenging for that board and slow the process. And I'd have to see how the person paying the bills, which is the MPO, feels about that.
Okay, so, but I'm looking at the attachment here. So Corey Knight's going to be on until 2026. Ian and Dale are now 425, just became 1225 for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so who else is on the committee?
That's it.
Yeah, the two.
Able to return back.
Eligible to be reappointed on April 24th.
If they would like to. I think I will apply.
Right. I know, I get that.
Just to make sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a sentence to them. They can they
Yeah.
can quit after they're done with this. I mean, so, but if it does put us in a position, we would have, it's a position we'd be in anyway,
Yeah.
to come up with 2 more members.
Yeah.
The guy who I was talking about earlier, who's on P&Z, is Matt Lamb. I think that's his background. It's also, he'd be valuable.
Yeah, and that's why, part of our afterthought on this was that he would make an excellent member of an ad hoc committee.
But do you think he might not sign up for a?
Well, he helped us with the Vision Zero plan, so, and he was one of our stalwarts that showed up to every meeting. So
I think we should
You're not constrained.
move on. It sounds like we're not going to get there tonight, so I think Laura's going to send us the information and then we'll thrill the audience with another discussion on this one.
Yeah. Okay.
Cliffhanger for all of our.
Did we do a public hearing on this one?
We did. We did. Yes.
That's how long we've been talking
To be
about it.
continued.
Yeah.
Can Robert put that at the bottom of the screen? To be continued.
Right. Okay. Well, let's move on to one we can resolve. 2025 Canvassing Board appointments. Laura, would you like to introduce the item?
Yes, the canvassing board is comprised of 1 council member, the city manager, the city clerk, and 1 resident member. The canvassing board is proposed by supervising the conduct of the election process and ascertaining the election results for city council to accept and certify. The first canvassing board meeting is tentatively scheduled for the week of February 3rd, 2025. There are 2 required dates for the whole canvassing board to be down in supervisor elections. That is Tuesday, March 11th at 4 and Friday, March 14th at 10. There will be an additional date or 2 for the canvassing board to meet. We're asking council to appoint a resident member and a council member and an alternate for each in the event that neither would be able to fulfill the appointments and duties. In the past, council members have volunteered. We have residents that were interested in serving are Doris Hawk, and she has served on 2 previous canvassing boards, and Kurt Round at LAB, and Tracy Garrett, who has previously served as the Community Redevelopment Agency representative of Orange County.
Okay. Great. So, in fairness to Ms. Howard, who's in the back of the room, let's take that part of it up first. Can we do that? So, let's see. And we could have a nomination for the resident member and alternative, which would be how we want to handle it. Does anybody have any? So we have Teresa Garrett and Doris Howe, who both would like to serve.
So at first I was kind of like, well, we need to give somebody else a chance, but Doris has been here. We're striving through this whole conversation of ours. And she loves doing this. And I know I've had the pleasure of working with her. So
I second that.
Okay. We have a nomination and a second. Lori, would you call the roll? We're increasing it third, I guess.
I would third.
Okay, yes. All right, there we go. Congratulations, Ms. Howard, and thank you, Teresa Garrett, if you're out there listening. We appreciate your willingness to serve.
Well, do we need an alternate?
Yes.
Oh, you need an alternate for her, okay?
Yes, please.
Okay,
So I'll make that motion, Teresa. Would be the.
I'll second that one.
okay. And I'll third that one. Since I had that moment. Okay, Teresa here, congratulations, you are the alternate. Great, and now it's up to us. City clerk and city manager are pretty easy. We know them. Do we need to name them here? Nope. Or is it by statute? Is it?
By charter.
By charter.
By charter, okay. All right, does anybody want to volunteer to be on the canvassing committee along with us?
I'll be out of town on Friday.
I'll volunteer only if Mike is the alternate.
I'll definitely support that.
Well, listen, I know everybody else's schedules and mine's pretty flexible, so that's why I do it. And I also enjoy it.
Awesome, yeah. Awesome, well, that's great. So, do we need to, I nominate Vance.
There you go.
I second
Well,
that.
You're limited. I nominate Vance.
Well, that goes to her. There you go, Vice Mayor. And then.
I nominate Vance, we got a nomination, a second. Third, we got it. And we need an alternate.
Nominate Mike.
Mike? I'll nominate Mark. I'll nominate Mike Wild to be the alternate.
I'll second.
I'll third.
All right. Awesome. I kept on yelling at that.
Yeah.
Is that it? Does that resolve that item?
Yes.
Okay, great. We are prepared now to handle the election, which is one of our solemn duties. Let's move on to city manager's report.
Just real quickly, Maitland Police and Fire Family Fun Day is this Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. right out here on Independence Lane and Independence Square. It's always a big event for families, very family oriented. Get downtown 6 to 9 as usual on the 7th on Independence Lane. Moving the park this month is going to be Inside Out 2. So if you have time, go out there and see Inside Out 1, classic. It's 6:30, Independence Square. And community cleanup days will be at Lake Sevilla from 9 to 11 a.m. Saturday, March 8th.
Question, will the, I don't know if Dan can answer this one, will the Orlando Brewing be open that Friday for a get down downtown?
I don't know if they'll be open. They've got their business tax receipt, but they haven't submitted permitting questions yet.
So what's this? I don't know this. We got a new brewer coming. They
Orlando,
sold.
yeah.
Yeah, Brew Orlando.
So that they,
What's that
the
Orlando
report
Brew?
was they sold and then,
Sorry.
They have a lease.
Brew
Okay.
Orlando.
okay. That'd be good.
Possibly coming to the old Medici too.
Churchy.
Vance and I were
Yeah, privy to
dazzled
that.
by our city manager at the state
Oh.
of the city.
10 out of 10. It was the best you've ever seen. I mean, there were stars and people were in awe.
Standing ovation.
Yeah, standing ovation.
I bored them to death. They couldn't even put their thoughts together for questions.
That's because they still have stars in their eyes.
Okay, well, that didn't make it to the city manager's report. Okay. Mr. City Attorney, what about the letter to property appraiser Mercado?
As of Friday, we received nothing, so if it's come in, it's come today, I'm not aware of it, but as of last week, nothing.
And today technically was the deadline, was the 5 days.
And when did we send it?
Last week.
Yeah, possible.
last Monday. Yeah.
Where we sent like a demand letter or something?
Yeah, just give us an answer or.
And the original was sent out,
Govern
what, a
yourself
month ago?
accordingly?
Yeah.
December 11th.
December 11th? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we're headed
6
into
weeks
February
ago.
here, yeah. Okay, well,
That's not nice.
and just so we're clear, I mean, I think what we did was give direction for the city attorney to go and do what he needs to do at that point.
That was, when Cliff and I talked, that was the direction that he communicated in the letter to her legal counsel.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Anybody other reports?
Oh, I will say this, the Druid Hills had last Saturday, had a little picnic in the middle of the island on Druid Road, and had about 60 residents come out just in our neighborhood everybody brought a little something to share, and that people were very happy that they met new neighbors, and we were, it's a lot of fun. So that's come from us.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's adjourn.